The privatisation of the London Olympic securities left it open to terrorist attacks. So it's a problem so huge, and a contract, all £280 million of it, so huge that nobody knows what to do about it. And the London Olympics begins in just 4 weeks today. So the answer has been to pretend there's no problem and hope for the best. We talked to Lee Hazledean, who's been undercover at the Olympic security firm G4S. Plus, we go back to the 1970s to pick up an incredible story of former Nazis living happily in South America and even putting out disinformation through the world press to cover their crimes. A documentary team led by World in Action's John Ware, who then went on to run Panorama, was secretly filming them. So we reflect on why, in 1963, the Israeli government pulled the plug on their own Mossad operation to bring Joseph Mengele, Martin Bormann, Klaus Barbie and other war criminals to justice. So we are joined on the line now by Lee Hazledean. Hi Lee, and welcome to Drivetime.
Hi, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now Lee, you've been working undercover, and is basically getting trained up by private security firm G4S, the old Group 4 security, ready for the London Olympics. First of all, how did you get the job? Was it easy?
Yeah, it was very easy. I basically went down to a training centre, which is located in Stratford in East London. Signed up there, said yep, and basically took some details, and that was it. I was signed up for the London Olympics, basically. They sent me out an application form some time later. I filled it out. I put work references down and personal references. I also had to fill it out online as well, and that's all that I did.
So have you been vetted?
No, I haven't, surprisingly enough. My work references and personal references have not been checked. You know, I'm a I'm a journalist, so all they'd have to do is check one of my work references. I mean, I don't try and hide the fact that I'm a journalist. I mean, that would be, you know, so we put the work references down, and it's a news agency. One of my work references are, and that obviously should have flagged something with them, but it hasn't been checked. So I'm still in as of today.
Okay, now, I mean, the idea of private security running this thing, I mean, you know, could you just give us an idea of your first experiences for working for G4S and being, I suppose, in some way trained to do the job?
Yeah, well, they're quite fanatical, I have to say that, in their views, and quite predatory. As far as everyone's concerned, is that members of the public are basically scum of the earth as far as they're concerned. The police have no power over them, and we get told this on a regular basis. Don't worry about the police, they can't do anything. As for training, it's been a joke, quite honestly. We've had 3 days of PowerPoint presentations, and one day working with the pedestrian screening area, which is where everyone will go through as they queue up for the Olympics with their tickets. They'll then go through an airport-style pedestrian screening area, and where someone like me will basically check that they're not having any metal items, the X-ray machine operators, and in theory that would work perfectly, except that people are not being trained properly to use the equipment. The X-ray operators, and I know because I'm one of them, only had 2 days worth of training and then expected to basically find everything, and obviously, you know, IEDs and things like that, you know, don't come, you know, looking like an IED. They're component parts. So, you know, 2 days worth of training, and, you know, you're expected to do all this sort of stuff. Plus, the metal detectors are only going to work 1 in every 50 times. So for every 50 people to go through, they'll ping once. And at peak times, we were told just the other day that they will be turned off completely. So therefore, if you're a terrorist, all you need to do is queue up, go through the lines of people, and the chances are that as long as you've got whatever it is on you, like ammunition or something, you'll walk straight through the metal detector. In fact, I was asked to be a would-be terrorist on the final training day, and I was given a knife, a gun, an IED, and on all 3 occasions throughout the day, I got through the metal detector, and I also got through the X-ray machine scanners. And when I actually went through the metal detector, first it didn't go off, and then they decided to use the hand wand, I noticed the chap who was using the hand wand hadn't actually turned it on, which I then informed him. He turned it on, and then when it pinged at the right place, he failed to spot the knife that I had on me. I also walked through with ammunition on, if someone walks through with one round of ammunition, if 50 other people do that, which terrorists do this, then guess what? You've got 50 rounds of ammunition in the Olympics, and that's a massacre.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because it's not everybody that does this sort of undercover investigative work. Whereabouts have you cut your teeth, Lee?
I worked for a television program, which was an undercover television program. I don't want to say too much about that because obviously that will give me away, because I won't be too hard to find. But that's basically where I worked, and then after that I've worked freelance, and I've worked with a number of agencies as well, doing various undercover assignments. I've done stories on the IRA. We infiltrated what would be an IRA handler and his team, and I did a big story for that, which was a real eye-opener about false flag information about the British government actually putting in soldiers into the IRA to then set off bombs and train the other members of the IRA and all that kind of stuff. So we've done a lot of stories like that. We also did cash for questions back in the day on the Conservative Party and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I've done quite a bit of work like this. And the thing is, it never surprises me that every time I go into a situation, it's the level of corruption and just the blatantness of it all. G4S are basically looking at numbers, getting lots of people through. They are not training them properly. And this is a major event for the world. It's going to be an amazing event, hopefully. And quite honestly, it's open to a terrorist attack very easily. And I don't say that lightly.
Yeah, but I mean, surely the obvious thing to do, Lee, is to go to somebody like Andy Davis, the Home Affairs editor at Channel 4 News.
Yeah, he said he wasn't interested. I actually went to him. Yeah, I sent him an email and I called. He was not interested, and he said that there is a media blackout on this kind of story, that nobody would be interested in running it. And so far, you're the only guys who are interested in hearing about this at all. I thought people would jump on the bandwagon and say, "Yeah, we really want to know what's going on," but apparently not. They don't want to know. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but it's pretty worrying. If the, do you also worry a little bit yourself that maybe by putting this information out there, explaining that there's very little proper security going to be happening at the London Olympics, that actually may encourage some sort of terror attack? No,
not really, because the thing is, if we thought like that, we'd never do anything, would we? The thing is, when you work on a story such as this, it's your duty as somebody who is a British citizen, who cares about their country, who cares about what's going on and what's happening right now in their country. And if there is going to be a terrorist attack, at least I can say, well, look, hold on a second. These are where the problem areas are going to be. And hopefully there is 4 weeks to go. G4S can get their act together and start tightening up security, perhaps actually training people, which would be really handy. I was given a booklet, and one of the things in the booklet from G4S is about a key training sample, and it's what does a security guard do the night before his shift? Have something to eat, get some sleep, iron his uniform. And that's the extent of the training that people are being given,
Okay, now what about the security being inadequately run by a training company called Contemporary International? Who are these people and how are they involved with G4S?
Well, we're not quite sure. Contemporary International seems to be an events management company. I have heard from various people within G4S that it's a G4S subsidiary company, but at the moment I haven't actually got any proof of that. They seem to be a separate company. I'm not quite sure. However, I think what's happened is that G4S has subcontracted the training to Contemporary International, and Contemporary International claim to do all sorts of events. However, when you go onto their website, you can't actually look at anything without a password. So they're very secretive and very private about what they do, which is a very worrying thing. Their trainers are all military personnel, and that was quite worrying to me. when I first arrived. You get a lot of shouting at, you get a lot of kind of, you're in the army now kind of mentality. And the trainers are basically there to go through these PowerPoint presentations very quickly, very briefly. They're not really trying to make anyone understand anything. So that's basically what they do. And to understand G4S is that you've got to understand that they are a military organization. They look like a civilian company on the outside, but internally they are run by, everyone's a major, everyone's, people are colonels I've met there. I mean, there's all sorts of guys. I met a major who's a doctor who works for G4S, who's also in Woolwich Barracks, checking people there as well, because there's 100,000 people going through Woolwich Barracks apparently since I think January of this year, which is a huge amount of troops coming through. And he says not all of those troops are British troops, and there's a lot of UN troops coming into London and being posted in and around London, and they're all having to go through Woolwich Barracks to begin with. So G4S and these event management companies are run with military personnel, and that's who you're dealing with, basically.
Okay, well, what about, I mean, this sounds pretty amazing that we've got, what you're saying is alleging there that there are actually foreign troops coming into Woolwich. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Any idea what nationalities and how many foreign troops as well as British troops? I mean, certainly for friends that I know who have got brothers and sisters in the military, this kind of thing, are saying that pretty much everybody in the British military, many people, including, RAF, people in the RAF who would normally be doing a sort of desk job, say, up north somewhere, are also being drafted down to London. But you're saying, on top of that, there are foreign troops too coming through Woolwich Barracks.
Yeah, he didn't really go into too much detail, other than say there's definitely American troops that he's seen already, and definitely German troops that he'd seen already. The official line is, what we were told on our first day of training, was that there would be 3,000 uniformed soldiers, which would be helping the public, giving directions, all that sort of stuff, as well as kind of other security roles. Obviously, they would have the undercover guys there too, and all that kind of stuff. But there was no mention of this 100,000 troops. And so when I brought that up, I was told, don't talk about it. That's none of your business. How did you know? And I said, well, I know somebody who mentioned it, so I thought I'd mention it to you guys, And they're like, don't talk about this. This is not for you to know, And actually, that's been a lot of the time that I've asked questions whilst we're doing the training. I've said, look, why are the metal detectors going to be switched off, at peak times? And they said simply, don't ask. And then when I pushed, they said, well, look, it's to get the people through, because they're so worried. There's going to be 80,000 people in the stadium. That's 80,000 members of the public. Then you're going to have all the security staff and all the back of house staff. And then you're going to have more people in the actual park itself. And they've got to come through a pedestrian screening area as well. So to get into the park, you're going to have to come through a pedestrian screening area. One assumes, again, by G4S, I don't know for a fact, but those machines will probably be turned off to get the people in. And then to get the people in, get into the stadiums, they'll be turning off those machines as well. And it's an absolute travesty. But you're just told not to say anything. Especially, don't speak to any journalists, which obviously makes me laugh.
Okay. Yeah, Lee, I mean, surely, to a certain extent, that's normal in any sort of high-security event, that people are going to only be told things on a need-to-know basis in order to make sure that, say, for example, a terrorist can't find out what the security arrangements are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is completely normal. But the thing is about this is that it feels wrong. I've been involved in a lot of security things over my career. I know a lot of high-ranking police officers, a lot of high-ranking military guys and stuff. I've spoken to a lot of people, and as I'm going through this training process, I'm saying this, to me, doesn't feel right. We're not being trained properly. The metal detectors, they don't work properly. If you've got something in your hand and you walk through a metal detector, it should go off. Well, these ones don't, because they're not the expensive ones that you would find in an airport. These are the cheaper ones that this company Rapiscan has supplied to the Olympics. And I think, half of me says maybe this is suspicious, and I'm actually quite worried. But the other half of me just says, well, maybe this has just gone to people who've bid the lowest for the contracts and, fulfilling it with the cheapest equipment, the cheapest labour. I mean, they're dragging, with all due respect to all the G4S staff who they're hiring, They're dragging the sort of the depths of the job centres. I mean, I've been in classes where drug deals have been going down in the open.
Sorry, you're saying that some of the people who are training for Olympic security are doing drug deals while they're being trained?
In my classroom, whilst I am being trained, I have been offered hash, I've been offered pills, right? And when I've just said no, that it's gone to someone else, a trainer, one of the military trainers who's in the room, saw someone doing it, tapped him on the shoulder and said, can you do it outside in a break? Right? That's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen.
Something else that I know you've seen is some of the people who are doing the training actually taking photographs on their mobile phones of some of the secure areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we know for a fact terrorists take surveillance photos. They did it in 9/11. They had rehearsals. They've done it in 7/7. They had rehearsals for that. People in my class that I've seen have been taking photos. Now, we're told that there's mobile phone jammers in every room, in every corridor, and that your mobile phone won't work. You may be able to take 1 or 2 photographs, but after, a week or so, your phone will die a death, apparently, right? And so, I questioned again one of the trainers about this, and he told me, no. There's no jammers. It's a verbal deterrent, right? And so what happens is because it's a verbal deterrent and there's actually no jammers in any of the classrooms, people are taking pictures on their mobile phones. Now, a few of them have been seen. And what happens is that people get tapped on the shoulder, they say, can you erase the photograph? They say yes, and they continue on with the training. Surely, those people should be taken out of the training, handed over to the police, and at least questioned and asked, why were you taking photographs of the training, of the trainers, and of the pedestrian screening areas? And these are the, in the training facility, it's an actual mock-up of what it would be like at the Olympics. So as they're taking pictures, they're filming and photographing actually what it's going to be like, the arrangements that are actually going to be in place. This company, Creative International, is causing a terrorist breach by letting these people continue with the training, surely.
Now, another thing that you've pointed out is that sometimes people who haven't even completed their SIA licences, and maybe you want to tell us what they are actually being put in charge of people who are actually highly trained security officers, for example, ex-soldiers and ex-police.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The SIA licence was issued to the security industry some years ago, just because people, the door supervisors in nightclubs and stuff were, beating people up and attacking people and what have you, and there's all sorts of trouble. So what they decided to do, the government said, look, let's regulate the industry and we'll create the SIA, which is the Security Industry Authority Licence. And so everybody who works in security has to have an SIA licence, no matter who you are, whether you're from a security guard on a gate, a door supervisor on a nightclub, or whether you're a close protection officer working in Afghanistan for G4S, right? Everyone has to have a licence. And you see them, they're standing out in nightclubs, they've usually got the armband on with the blue licence in the pouch or around their neck in some way. So G4S have had funding from the government and from sponsors to put people through their SIA licences, because it's actually quite expensive to actually go out and get it. I think it's about £370 to £400, depending on where you go. So for the person who is sort of, say, on the dole, who hasn't worked, in a long time, long-term unemployed, suddenly to get £300 or £400 and go to do their SIA licences, it's not doable. So they've been given funding in order to get the long-term unemployed back into work, which is a great idea. However, what they're doing is they're taking the 4-day course and they're basically just rushing people through it, because they've got so many thousands of people to get through these courses. They're rushing people through it. They're not completing their courses properly, and so therefore they're not going to be trained properly in the basics of security guarding, let alone, anything else. When I did the SIA licence myself, I had a wonderful trainer who had worked in clubs, who was an ex-soldier, who could tell you all sorts of stories and what have you, and he made sure that everybody passed the exams properly. Well, in G4S and their trainers, they're not doing that. And so what people are doing is they're getting sent letters, and on these letters they've got, you are going to work in a pedestrian screening area. That's the letter I got. Someone else has got a letter saying you are going to be a team leader. Now, a team leader is the person who's in charge of a pedestrian screening area. That is the person that, if you've got a problem, say someone walks through a metal detector and it goes off, and you can't find the objects on the person, you put your hand up and it's team leader. That team leader is supposed to be an experienced person, someone who is calm and professional, who knows exactly what they're doing. And people who haven't even passed their SIA licenses yet are getting flagged up to be team leaders. Now, I had a Gurkha come to me, a Gurkha, right, who says, how come I'm not a team leader? This is ridiculous. I've had ex-policemen say, well, look, I've been with the Met Police for X amount of years. I retired. I wanted to do something. I had an SIA license, so I've come to do the Olympics. And I'm not a team leader. I've got 20 years in the police. I mean, this is crazy. So, again, it's, to me, my suspicious mind says something's wrong with this. And, it's definitely not right that people are being looked over with experience against people who've not even done their SIA licenses. I don't understand that. And then it comes back down to maybe it's just a money thing. Maybe it's just cheaper just to get these people through, as quickly as possible. They don't care who's going to be a team leader or not. They're getting the minimal training. If anything really serious happens, I suppose the police are there. There are other people there. They can just flag it up. But still, these are people that are going to be representing the country, the people of this great country, to people from all over the world. And these people are the first people you're going to meet. And, with again, greatest respect to everybody, they don't speak English very well. The majority of them don't, Some don't speak English at all. We had, on the fourth day, we had a brief test where we had to basically talk someone through a bag search. One person who's standing next to me couldn't speak a word of English, and the trainer said, "It's okay, I know what you mean." And I turned to him and said, "Well, can you explain? I don't know what he means." And I laughed, and the trainer just said, "Don't worry about it, mate," And so these people are going to be representing this great country to all these people from around the world. When you queue up with your tickets, these are the first people that you're going to meet. Basically, thugs, And, with the greatest respect to a lot of the people there, a lot of them actually do want to do a good job, but are complaining constantly because they don't know what they're doing. And they know they don't know what they're doing. And they know they're going to be on show. And they know that this is going to be a big event. And they're worried that they're going to let, say, the side down. And everyone's talking amongst themselves, which is how I get most of my great information from.
Well, I imagine that hopefully, anyway, G4S will take some of what you're saying on board. Do you think there's any possibility of that, or will they just be totally in denial about it?
No, I shouldn't think they will at all. I mean, I really hope they do. I think it's really important. I'm going to be trying to get the story out before the Olympics anyway, as best as I can, because I think it's really important to tighten everything up, to make sure that those metal detectors are working all the time. A friend of mine in an airport said, the metal detectors ping once every 10 people, and that's called a random search. That's fair enough. Why can't we just have that? They have just as many people coming through, okay, maybe not in the peak times, but look, the metal detectors have got to work, and that's my main worry. I'm not trying to out G4S as a bad company or anything like that. I mean, they are a huge company. There's nearly 1 million people that work for them, and I think that's sinister within itself, actually, that, a company with nearly 1 million people working for them, is putting so many people into London at the time of the Olympics, and especially as also we're being told about this, let me try and get my quote absolutely correct, this defining moment in the history of London. And the trainer who told me this from Contemporary International wasn't referring to the Olympics. She said, after the Olympics, there is going to be a defining moment in the history of London. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, we can't say, it's just that's what's going to happen. And so I'm getting worried now and thinking, well, look, there's all these foreign troops coming in. There's thousands of G4S people in the country. What's going to happen? Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just a precaution. Or maybe they're just saying you're going to be employed by G4S afterwards. There are lots of questions still to be asked. And I think G4S needs to actually come out and they need to tell the truth. Is it just shoddy, they're just, bid the lowest for the contracts, and they've got these contracts to fulfill, and they can't fulfill them in the price that they've said, so they're cutting corners left, right, and centre. If it's that, to be fair, that's okay. That can be fixed. We can deal with that. We can start doing the searches of the stadium again. We can tighten up the security, the pedestrian screening areas. Because, if one person gets through into that Olympic stadium, just one, even if it's with a handgun, with one bullet in, that's going to be the Olympic message, you know. And to me, that's disgraceful. So look, you know.
Well, no, hang on a second though, Lee, because this defining moment you're talking about there, I mean, surely she could have been talking about something positive. You know, actually, the Olympics being a positive defining moment for Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, she could have been. I'm quite a paranoid person, and so I found it quite sinister.
Well, I mean, you're not the only one who you would actually, you know, say you use the word paranoid flippantly there, but just to remind people that that there's a whistleblower working for G4S on the Olympics was sacked after speaking out about G4S cutting corners when vetting security staff for the Olympics. This was reported by the Daily Mail on the 2nd of June. That's just a couple of weeks ago. Sarah Hubble was told not to return after contacting the media about her experiences working for G4S. Well, obviously, Lee, she wasn't as smart as you. She wasn't in there undercover. She said she had access to passport information, bank account details and national insurance cards, but had not herself been vetted. She said staff had to process a minimum of 10 applications an hour, and the documents ended piled up in corners of their office in Stockton-on-Tees. She claimed the system was creaking under the pressure of processing thousands of applications ahead of this summer's games. And when asked about it by the Daily Mail, G4S simply said that she was lying.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And look, you know, how many people can be lying, quite honestly? You know, she cared about the Olympics. We all care about the Olympics. What we want to see is an amazing event where this country can do itself proud, can take part in all the games, can say, hey, look, we put on an amazing event that is up there with some of the best Olympics that has ever been. That's all that we want to have happen. And companies like G4S, are doing their damnedest to basically, you know, make sure that that doesn't happen by not doing things properly. You know, obviously, you know, I want to try and stay in there for as long as possible without getting found out by G4S. So I'm sure there's going to be a big manhunt in the next time I go into work. You know, if they're listening to this, and try and really stay there for as long as possible to see what the outcomes of all this is. Because if I was to leave now, obviously I'd only have half the picture. So I actually want to stay in there for as long as possible, hopefully to the Olympics, and then keep reporting back on what's going on and how they're doing.
Well, nice one, Lee, and I hope you can maybe report back to this show over the weeks as long as you get on. Now, also, another thing you said which is also really worrying is that uniforms are going missing or being stolen from the uniform distribution centre in the training facilities. Yes,
absolutely. Okay. This came directly from a contemporary international person, and I reconfirmed it with a G4S security guard. Somebody had come into the training area and they were given a uniform by mistake, and they were told to then go back out to hand it back in. And then someone else came out and said, you know, uniforms are going missing all the time. If you've got a letter to pick up a uniform, you're the only people that's supposed to pick up a uniform, right? Okay, but people aren't. People are going up to the uniform depot, as it were, and saying, I'm here for a uniform. Oh, I forgot my email. And they're going, don't worry about it, we'll give you a uniform. Now, again, we know in Iraq, in Afghanistan, terrorists get police and security uniforms. They dress up, they have the accreditation, they then come back in, and then they do something. This is, you know, modus operandi, you know, of a terrorist. So that to me is extremely worrying as well. And on top of the uniforms as well, people have been given the wrong accreditation material. And the accreditation material comes from LOCOG. And what LOCOG do is that they look at everybody and they say, okay, you're going to be a security guard for G4S. These are the areas that you're allowed to go into. You know, you're going to be assigned to the stadium, or you're going to be assigned just the outer perimeter. And in the outer perimeter, that gives you access to the Olympic Park. Or if you're in the stadium, that's going to give you access to, you know, all the administration buildings, the Olympic Park, and the other Olympic venues only, right? People have been saying that they've been given the wrong accreditation. I had an army guy come to me, and he said, look, you know, I've just basically been given the wrong accreditation, and I was told to go away and come back in a week to get it replaced in a week. I mean, you know, this is crazy. What happens if that guy didn't come back? You know, he was, you know, you can see he was an honest guy, and he was worried. And so, you know, what happens if that, you know, a terrorist actually goes there and says, look, you know, I want accreditation. I'm on the training course. Here's my, proof I'm on the training course. They give him accreditation. It's the wrong accreditation, and he just never comes back, except when the games start, and he will be able to walk into the Olympic Park. This is how worrying it all is. Uniforms going missing, wrong accreditation being given to people. I mean, this is not just G4S. This is Contemporary International, and this is LOCOG as well. And let's just say that LOCOG is a private company, and basically they're not accountable to anybody, as they keep telling us,
Okay, we're getting towards the end of because you sent me a sort of bullet point list of various things that you'd discovered, and one of the most worrying ones is that there is also a plan for the evacuation of the whole of London as part of the Olympic plans, and G4S are involved in, just in case something goes wrong. The whole of London? Can you really evacuate the whole of London?
Well, that's what I said, but apparently you can. And as far as I know, what's going to happen is that the security guards used for the Olympics will be at the forefront of getting the public out of London. And I don't know how they're going to do that, because we haven't been told that much. But that's all that basically they've said to us, is that if there's need for an evacuation of London, and they seem quite serious about it. This didn't seem something like, they spent a lot of time on this. For example, on day 2, they were talking about, the pedestrian screening areas, and they covered that in like half an hour. They spent a good 2 hours talking about the evacuation of London and how important.
Now, just a minute, Lee, hang on a minute. There's something like 11.5 million people in London. How the hell are they going to get 11.5 million people out?
Well, I don't know. But the thing is, if you think about it, if you've got, you've got 125,000 people that are basically working for the Olympics at the Olympics time. That's including security, various contractors, and other people with accreditation, police, security, everything. Then you've got the army that's going to be there, and plus this other batch of army that are coming in. Now, if it's true that really are 100,000 other troops coming into London and being held at barracks all around London, surely, maybe that would be enough to get people out of London. If, I suppose, that there was a terrorist attack that was so horrific, everyone would want to go anyway, and that's what I've been thinking about. That's the only way, I guess, people would want to leave London, is if a biological chemical weapon had gone off. You'd want to get as far away from London as possible, and so therefore you need as much help as possible. The fact that they're saying it before the Olympics is quite worrying to me.
Well, surely, they're saying that they're being well prepared, surely.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you've got to think. Otherwise, you wouldn't turn up for work, would you? But it's worrying. I've never heard that said before. But then again, we've never had an Olympics here before. Well, not in my lifetime, anyway. So I'm just being again paranoid about everything a little bit. But then that's what's kept me alive all these years.
Okay, the final thing is the casket linings. This is basically for dead bodies. Apparently 200,000 of those being shipped into London.
Yeah, these casket linings can hold... I didn't know what they were at first, because they said casket linings, and I said, what's that? I said, is that for a coffin? And they said, no, it's a coffin. And I said, oh, okay. And they said, well, they can hold 4 to 5 bodies each casket lining can. And I suppose, again, if a terrorist attack or something was to happen at the Olympics, you'd probably need, a lot of these things, to put people in, So again, to me, that was quite worrying, From the day one of joining the Olympics, I felt it's got more sinister as time has gone on. And, obviously you're getting little tidbits of information. They're not telling you everything. Obviously they can't, because that's a security risk in itself. But if they just said, hey, look, this is a precaution, this isn't going to happen, but if it did, this is the procedures that we do. Well, they're not saying it like that. They're saying, these are the casket linings, and this is what we're going to be putting people in if something happens. And to me, I don't think I need to know that as a security guard working for G4S on a pedestrian screening area. Maybe I do if I'm a policeman. Maybe I do if I'm part of the other emergency services. But as a security guard, I don't think we need to know all this particular information. Especially about the evacuation of London and things like that. And it seemed to me that they were reveling in giving us this information. They were giving us kind of, one of the guys, Nicholas, who is one of the trainers at Contemporary International, was laughing about it as he was giving this information, and almost sort of, he was excited by it. And to me, that was worrying. If that was me giving the information, I'd be very deliberate, I'd be very sober, and I'd say, hey, look, this is a precaution, but ... And it's not being delivered that way. And on the other hand, you can think, well, maybe, these guys at G4S and in Contemporary International, they are ex-soldiers. They don't think anything of saying things, and they're just saying things as they would do if they were still in the army. And I understand that to a certain degree as well.
Okay, well, Lee Hazledean, thanks very much. And finally, I did say finally just now, but again, finally, I've just noticed something else that you scribbled to me, and that was that we've got search and destroy drones as well. Now, this is something I think which is quite new to London. We've heard about these missile bases on the tops of tower blocks, but not the search and destroy drones.
Yeah, the Predator drones. Yeah, we were told that quite specifically, actually. They said that, if a terrorist attack, happens in a van or anything like that, don't worry, because there's Predator drones in the sky and they will take them out. You won't ever see them, but they're circling London. And again, I found that a little bit worrying as well.
These are the sort of Yemen and Afghanistan type things, aren't they, that have been killing people over there?
We were shown a video, actually. They showed us a PowerPoint presentation, a little bit about the drones, what they do, what they carry, and how now they recognise targets and stuff, how they're flown, remote controlled, and we were shown a little video of them taking out a group of people. I think it was in Afghanistan, and I found that very upsetting, quite honestly. A few people cheered in the crowd, but I don't cheer when I see people getting killed, whether they're so-called Taliban terrorists or not. I find that very disturbing, quite frankly.
And do you think it would have been possible for, say, ordinary police to have done this job rather than a massive company like G4S?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the police are trained for. This is what they do every day. At least I think if you were to bring on private security, then, yes, outer perimeters private security with the pedestrian screening areas being, perhaps with the team leader being a policeman. If there's not enough policemen to do the whole job, then private security should be, people who are doing the metal detector and things like that. Professional police to actually oversee that, and professional police people who can train the X-ray operators, who or could be the X-ray operators. Surely there's enough people in the country, or we could even fly them in from around the world, I suppose, who are professional X-ray operators. Just for this event. How hard can that be? But I do think the police need to take a bigger role in what they're doing, because as far as they keep saying to us, they keep mentioning the police, but saying, oh, well, the police will be happy to help you, because they'll be bored most of the time. They won't be doing anything.
Well, I've spoken to journalists who were briefed by the police, freelance journalists in London, and the police are saying, well, we've really got nothing to do with this event. We are not in any way saying who goes in and who goes out at all.
That's right, and they should be. And you know what? When I asked very subtle questions, and so it doesn't seem like I'm a journalist sticking my hand up, But when I was asking basically, how are they going to be identifying, potential, terrorists or, undesirables coming in? And he says, don't worry about that, let JTAC handle all that kind of stuff, and that's the Joint Terrorist Analysis Centre. But they don't really do anything. All they do is collate information and then pass it on to the relevant agencies. So really, what we're hoping for, really, is for a terrorist to come with a big sign that says, I am a terrorist, and and for the security services to step in. Unfortunately, in my experience and experience of the world, that doesn't tend to happen. So I think the police need to actually, stand up to G4S. This is the police of this country, They are good at what they do. They are hard-working people. We pay them a lot of money to do this. I would like to see them at the Olympics doing their job.
Okay, well, Lee Hazledean, thanks ever so much for that fascinatingly detailed exclusive report. And we hope to be speaking to you, if you manage to remain undercover, in future weeks.
Okay, Tony, thanks ever so much.
Cheers. Now I'm joined by Martin Summers in the studio. Martin, the implications here are pretty horrific, aren't they? The idea that a private company is running this, and also they are looking at it simply as a money-making exercise. What Lee's alleging there is that they're cutting a lot of corners, and that ultimately that the games are wide open.
Well, I think that's true, but I think also the point he made about the police not being in charge is extremely worrying. We know for a fact from previous history that terrorist attacks on big events like this and big targets like the World Trade Center are not always carried out by people coming from outside. So, for example, I'll give you an example. The underpants bomber, so-called, who was arrested over Detroit supposedly setting off a bomb in his underpants a couple of Christmases ago. We know for a fact, because Laurie Haskell and Kurt Haskell, who are lawyers who were on the plane, have given the information to the international media, it's been ignored here, that he was taken onto the plane without going through security at all by a well-dressed Indian gentleman. And in fact, he didn't have a passport or a ticket. Now, in other words, and that was at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Now, the security at Schiphol Airport is not run by the Dutch authorities. It's been privatised, as we've just been discussing. It's actually run by an Israeli security company called ICTS, who've actually been banned from various Scandinavian airports. Privatisation of security is an open invitation to terrorist attack, and we're not talking about people in caves in Afghanistan. Looks like the underpants bomber was actually a set-up job by somebody's intelligence services. We're not quite sure who.
So what evidence do you have for that?
We've got Kurt Haskell. Go to his blog and you will see he gave evidence at the trial of the guy, which was disallowed, although he did give a statement to the court. He said, I was on that plane, and that he's not the only one. He saw the underpants bomber being taken onto the plane without going through any detectors at all, and that he didn't have a passport or a ticket. Now, in other words, the real problem with terrorist attacks, and we could include 7/7 and 9/11 in this, is that they're not in fact carried out by random people trying to break through a security ring. They're done by people inside the security ring, often connected to intelligence agencies. And this is why you shouldn't privatise security.
Now, this is, you mentioned,
you're opening the door to these kind of things happening.
Well, you mentioned the 7/7 London bombings there. One thing that very few people know is that the CCTV surveillance system, which is actually quite sophisticated across the London Underground, was privatised just about 6 months before the London bombings, and privatised to an Israeli firm, Verint Systems. Now, Verint is actually a small company of a parent company, and the boss of that parent company, Kobe Alexander, is on the run from the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, having absconded with $13 million of Converse Technologies money, last heard of out in Namibia in hiding and facing extradition back to the United States. So obviously it's a crooked parent company, but Daniel Bodner, who's the chief executive of Verint Systems, who are the private security firm for the London Underground, and still are, I believe, he's a former Israeli explosives officer in the Corps of Engineers in Israel.
Indeed. So we talk about, who are the experts to protect us from the terrorists? So it'll be the experts on anti-terrorism, that'll be the Israelis, and they win these kind of contracts. But it's not just the Israelis. We know that there were exercises running on the day of 7/7, because Peter Power told the TV audience that they were planning exercises on bombs going off in exactly the tube stations where they did go off, which is why when Lee was talking there, I presume that's not his real name, about them talking about there will be some kind of event at the Olympics, and we've provided all these body bags, you don't need to know any more. The worry has to be that the terrorists inside the Western intelligence services, including the Israeli intelligence services, are planning a terrorist attack on the Olympics. And of course, it's far easier to carry out a terrorist attack if you're on the inside. And if we go back to the Munich Olympics and the attack on the Israeli team there, that was carried out by the Abu Nidal faction of the PLO or PFLP. Now, Abu Nidal was widely suspected all over the Middle East of actually working for the Israelis. So in other words, what the Israelis did there, possibly, is attack their own team in order to garner sympathy and so on and so forth.
Fascinatingly enough, we've had a news story this week in The Independent and in various other newspapers. Neo-Nazis helped carry out the Munich Olympics massacre.
Yes, working with the Abu Nidal group. But the Abu Nidal group, he was based in Baghdad eventually, but he's widely believed across the Middle East by serious journalists to have been working, like Robert Fisk in Beirut, for example, to have been an Israeli agent all along. Now, I'm not saying that there is a plan by the Israelis or anybody else to attack the Olympics, but if your task is counter-terrorism at the Olympics, don't just think of people coming from caves in Afghanistan. Think about who are the private companies that are being employed, who are their leaders. I mean, Blackwater and so on, they've been engaged in terrorist activity. Now, the fact is that these private companies are an open invitation to terrorism by well-connected intelligence operatives.
Reports by Iraqi, this is moving up to the present, this is 2 days ago, a news agency called FNA, reports by Iraqi media have revealed that Israeli Secret Service Mossad is very active in Iraq and spying on Iran and its allies under the cover of Jordanian companies, according to a report by Iraqi Nakhel, that's Nakhel news agency. Iraqi resistance groups in separate statements have released the information and details of such undercover places and entities in different regions of Iraq, including Taji, Kirkuk and Baghdad, and announced that they have targeted these Israeli sites.
Yes, and also it says in here that they've been involved. I mean, obviously you expect Mossad to be operating in Iraq as an intelligence agency. Most intelligence agencies are. That's in a way legitimate. But it suggests here that they've been involved in assassinating over 550 scientists and academic figures. So it's in Israel's interest to destroy Iraq's industrial and military capacities, so they've been involved in assassinating scientists. Now, in other words, a lot of the mayhem out there, and we've been talking about Syria in the previous weeks, a lot of the mayhem in Syria is clearly being orchestrated by Western intelligence agencies. The Saudis, the Qataris, the French, the British, the Turks are aiding the rebels. There's no doubt about it. The rebels are terrorists. The Hula massacre, it turns out, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung has blamed the rebels, not the Assad regime. Now, in other words, terrorists come in all shapes and sizes, and they're not necessarily just Muslim guys with beards.